Hey, you've tuned into Math with Mr. C. This is 10, 6, and 7 combined, multiplying and dividing integers. It's totally okay to combine these two lessons because they're so similar. They have the same rules. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Here's your homework to check for 10, 5 practice, subtracting integers. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Here's our first example problem. Multiplying integers. How can you identify the sign of a product of two integers? They're just saying if there's two numbers, such as backwards 5 or negative 5 and negative 4, if you multiply them, I know that 5 times 4 is 20. But is the sign in front of the 20, is that going to be negative? Is that going to be backwards? Or is it positive? So here's some rules to help us. When multiplying integers, the signs of the factors help you find the sign of the product. So we should be looking at the sign in front of the numbers. For example, 5 groups of 3, 5 times 3, is 5 plus 5 plus 5. There's 3 5s, which would equal 15. So 5 times 3 is 15. We already know how to do that. So the product of two positive integers is positive. So what we just did from here is actually located right here. If the first factor is positive, such as 5, and the second one's positive, like 3, then the product will also be positive, like 15. But the other rule that I want you to see is if the first one's negative, like negative 5, and the second one's negative, like negative 4, the answer will also be positive. So what sign is this for 20? It's actually the answer of positive 20, or you don't even need to have a sign there at all. It's just 20. Now these rules aren't meant to be confusing, but if you remember that if both of them are the same, both are negative, or both are positive, then you know that the answer is positive. If they're different, it's negative. So here's another problem. Negative 3 times 5. Or we could say backwards 3 groups of 5. So we're going backwards 3 groups of 5. And it's the same thing as if we had this. So what does that mean? Well, I'm seeing there's 5 here. There's 1, negative 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what that means. Backwards 3, and there's 5 groups of them. And I see that if I added these all together, backwards 3, and then backwards 3 more, and then backwards 3 more, and then backwards 3 more, and backwards 3 more, with a clue word of coffee cup, then you go backwards 15. So as I talked to you about it before, I see that both of these signs are the same here. And we're just going to look at this table to help us understand why this answer is 15. Backwards 5, groups of 3, well that's negative 15. We know that we would write negative 5 3 times, negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5, that'd be negative 15. Negative 5 times 2, and just look at your chart, and we see that negative 5 times 0 is 0, and then we start to go into the positive. Now we're changing the second one into a negative, and there's 2 negatives, which makes a positive. And I'm about to give you an easy way to remember that after the notes. Here's your vocab notes. Now the easy way that I was going to say to remember that is that 2 swords can cross to make a positive sign. So I see 2 negative signs, you can think of them as swords. But because there's 2 of them in the problem, then they can come together, and the answer is going to be positive. Think of this sword as up and down, and this sword as sideways, and they're making a positive together. But only one sword would be negative. Now, I want you to write this in your notes. Every time that we do a problem today, first ask yourself, are they the same sign? Because if they are, the answer is positive. Here's example 1. I want to go over how to read this. This is 3 groups of backwards 8. We remember that negative is backwards. So 3 groups of backwards 8. I know that what that actually is doing is negative 8 plus negative 8 plus negative 8. There's 3 of them. And I know that if I add 3 negatives, if I go backwards 3 times, then I'm going to have backwards 24, which is 3 times 8 is 24. And I see there's only one negative sign, and so I bring that down, and that's going to be my answer. Meanwhile, on number 2, negative 9 times negative 6, or backwards 9 times backwards 6, then I see that there are 2 negative signs. 1, 2. I know that 9 times 6 is 54, And I'm thinking of this as two swords that can cross, and because there's two of them in the problem, they're crossing and becoming an answer of a positive 54. And we're still on example 1, but we are now doing dividing since it's just pretty much the same but slightly different. And so this is negative 54 split into groups of negative 6. I know that 54 divided by 6 is 9, and I'm seeing, is this positive or negative? Well, there's two negative signs. I know that those can cross, and that can make a positive. For our second problem in division, we have backwards 63 split into 7 groups. If I have backwards 63 and we split it into 7 groups, in 63 divided by 7 would be 9. And I see there's only one negative sign, so I'm going to bring that down, and it's going to be negative 9 as my answer. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Here's example 2. Please try to do 1 and 2 of multiplying, and I'm going to show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. If you remember how to read this, this is backwards 14 or negative 14 squared, which just means that there's two of them and you're multiplying them. So this is negative 14 times negative 14. I can't actually do 14 times 14 in my head, so I'm going to need to write that out. Adding them together. Our answer is 196, but my question is whether this is positive or negative. I see two negative signs, therefore they can cross like two swords, and they're making a positive. My answer is positive 196. Next, 17 groups of negative 3. That will be going negative 3 backwards 17 times, which is backwards a lot. I need to find out what 17 times 3 is. 51, and there's only one negative sign, so that's backwards 51 is my answer. Now on to dividing. Please do 1 and 2 of dividing for still an example 2, and I'm going to show you the answer after you're done in 3, 2, 1. First I'm thinking, if I have 21 and I split it into backwards 7 groups, what is 21 divided by 7? That's 3. I'm looking, how many negative signs are there? There's 1. So I'm going to bring that down. My answer is negative 3. Here's 52 split into backwards 52 split into groups of backwards 26. How many groups would there be? Well, I know that 52 divided by 26 is 2. And how many negative signs are there? There's 1, 2. I'm going to bring both of those down, and they cross, making a plus sign. My answer is positive 2. There'd be 2 groups of negative 26. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Please do all 4 of independent or partners practice, remembering to write your original problem. Showing you the answer in 3, 2, 1. There are your answers to independent or partners practice. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Thank you for watching this video. Please click the link below for the video and practice of Khan Academy, and then choose which ones you'd like to do for here. Thank you for watching this video, and you're awesome.